Inclining its head, the dragon spread its wings, dazzlingly. Oh my god.
Dazzlingly.
Welcome to Breakfast in Beauclair, a global Witcher podcast. My name is Alyssa from GoodMorhen, and I'll be your host as I, and our international hanza accompany Geralt of Rivia and his destiny, Cirilla of Cintra, across the continent. Last Tuesday, November 25th, Breakfast in Beauclair crossed 10,000 downloads. Yes, 10,000 downloads after 8 episodes in under 4 months, which is wild. I want to extend a thank you to our past guests, Chris, Charlotte of Vengerberg-Glamry, Cyprian, Oleg, Jess, Crisanto, and Anita and Karolina of Witcher Kitchen, as well as all of our future guests. Thank you to Lars from Witcherflix for being a rockstar correspondent, and a huge thank you to each patron on Patreon and every member of our international hanza, including you. Thank you for reviewing and supporting the show, thank you for sharing it with your friends and family, and thank you for sharing your stories and passion with me. This project has been so much more than I could have ever imagined, and I'm so grateful to just be a part of it. To commemorate this milestone, I want to spotlight some of the other creators of the continent, along with Witcherflix, Vengerberg-Glamry, and Witcher Kitchen, who you all know and love. I want to introduce you to Brett from the Whispers of Oxenfurt podcast, Sophia, Lorena, and Anna of the Escuela de la Golondrina podcast, and Alejandro of Academia de Oxenfurt and Mahakam Workshop. Some of you may already know Brett from Whispers of Oxenfurt, but if you don't, you should definitely check out his podcast. I was actually listening to it the other day while I was getting ready for that 13-hour interview day. He just did a wonderful episode on the Battle of Brenna. If you've already gotten to Lady of the Lake, I would highly suggest that you check it out. It was absolutely beautiful. His podcasts are short form. They tend to be about 8 to 20 minutes. So if you're interested on brushing up on the lore, or if you're interested in getting a little bit more about how our world's history is parallel to the history of the Witcher universe, definitely go check them out. Sophia, Lorena, and Anna are new, and they are members of our international hanza who have recently started a podcast over in Spain. Escuela de la Golondrina, which I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, is a Spanish podcast about The Witcher. So go check them out. They're absolutely wonderful. And if you're like me and you want to practice your Spanish because you have 3 grandmas in Spain who don't speak any English, and every time you visit them, you wish you knew more Spanish, go listen to their podcast. And the last person I want to spotlight is Alejandro, or Lale, of Academia de Oxenfurt and Mahakam Workshop. So he has these 2 projects. Academia de Oxenfurt is a news site centered around Witcher news and the community, in Spanish as well. Alejandro is from Argentina. He also makes these beautiful, beautiful projects over at Mahakam Workshop, which you should totally go check out. He makes lore-specific shields and a lot of really beautiful handcrafted wooden goods. Yeah, so go check him out. If you've been following Breakfast in Beauclair on social media, you know that I've been seeking out podcast guests for the show. And as I've been meeting more of you and getting to know each of you personally, it's really become clear to me that a lot of you are interested in getting involved in the community, and you're looking for the opportunity to talk to other people about The Witcher and about the podcast. One of my dreams for the show really is to create an engaged international company of friends. And that's what I want to do. So let's start a conversation. Beginning with episodes 8 and 9, which cover the bounds of reason, there will be an open discussion on our subreddit, the hanza, for each episode. So head over to the hanza after listening and jump in with your thoughts, reactions to the episode, or bring up new themes and ideas that we didn't cover. The floor is yours. I'm looking forward to bringing our community together in this new way. Speaking of community, I'm excited to introduce Will P. and Brandon, 2 members of our international hanza who've become our newest patrons on Patreon as producer-level patrons. Shout out to the very first patron of Breakfast in Beauclair, Jameson, who upgraded his pledge to join our producer-level patrons, Louise of Covier, the owner of the Churlish Porpoise, Cool Guy Henry, Eric the Godling, Katie the Redhead of Toussaint, Jacob, Mahakam Elder Joe, Julie, and Sylvia of Skellige. As producer-level patrons, they receive an introduction shout-out, a spot on the website, monthly bonus content, stickers, a t-shirt, an exclusive producer gift, and producer credits in each and every episode. If you'd like to explore becoming a patron of the show, head over to patreon.com/breakfastinbeauclair. As for this episode, we're joined again by our Polish friends Anita and Karolina of Witcher Kitchen to discuss the first short story from Andrzej Sapkowski's Sword of Destiny, The Bounds of Reason. Together we'll explore themes such as the at-odd feelings of love and longing that complicate the relationship between Geralt and Yennefer, jobless golden dragon, and a second unexpected dissertation, this time on Polish swearing. During the mid-episode break, Lars from Witcherflix returns with his biggest segment yet, recapping interviews with the cast and crew and analyzing the titles of the upcoming Netflix episodes. Without further ado, let's get to this episode's short story, The Bounds of Reason. Hey everyone, welcome back from the break. I'm here with Anita and Karolina of Witcher Kitchen discussing The Bounds of Reason from Andrzej Sapkowski's Sword of Destiny. When we left off, Geralt had joined a hunting party stalking a dragon near Bearfield. Amongst the party are Dandelion, his former love Yennefer, another sorcerer, dragon hunters, knights, and a mysterious man named Borch and his Zerrikanian escort. In Part 6, the entire hunting party marches toward the Kestrel Mountains. While crossing a bridge in the wilderness, a landslide scatters the party, endangering the Witcher and the sorceress, who are saved at the last second. You know, as we've talked about in the last part, we see a lot of the animosity toward Geralt and Yennefer from other members of the hunting party here.
Yes.
For example, Guildenstern, who's like the lord who's beneath King Nidemir, he basically speaks for Nidemir on more occasions than not. He and Geralt start talking as they're on the road, and he basically tells Geralt, you know, why are you even here? What are Witchers doing? When I was younger, Witchers didn't have two pennies to rub together, and they did whatever they were asked. Now Witchers have moral scruples, and it's absolutely ridiculous, is the brunt of what Guildenstern says to him, which, you know, obviously upsets the Witcher. And then the Witcher doesn't get a break because Dorigere sides up behind him and he starts spouting druidic theories to Geralt about, like, the world's in equilibrium, everything's as it should be, nature will kill itself and we'll kill each other and everything should be protected. It's very like this hippy-dippy vibe. Even though he's a sorcerer, he apparently has a lot of moral influences from druids. So we do see that, and the characters, even amongst themselves, make a note of it. You know, while this is happening, Yennefer rides up and interrupts Dorigere's insistence that we shouldn't be hunting dragons, and Yennefer says dragons are the natural enemy of man because even though there are other creatures that may slaughter humans, dragons are the only ones that can wreak havoc on entire towns. They're the only ones that can threaten a woman who's meant to carry a natural life cycle of childbirth. And this is where we start to see that Yennefer has her own insecurities about her own infertility.
Yes, of course.
Dorigere upsets her by saying all this stuff about childbirth and Yennefer's argument. Geralt notes how angry she is by saying Yennefer, like most sorceresses, was barren, but unlike most sorceresses, she bemoaned the fact and reacted with genuine rage at the mention of it, which goes back to everything that we were talking about in the last part.
Dorigere, if I say correct,
yes,
didn't know that Yennefer soon will revenge.
Yes, yes.
She didn't like when someone talked to her
yes.
like this.
Yeah, he's definitely putting himself in a bad place.
Yes.
Exactly.
And I think she says that. She's like, oh, he's gonna get it. Like,
yes, this look like I will kill you soon.
As the convoy is kind of going along, Geralt eventually finds his way to Borch. And they have a brief conversation about purpose. Geralt is, I think, a little upset, you know, although he hides it. He's continually been told by Guildenstern, then Dorigere, then Yennefer, that he's just kind of there as, quote, a servile golem.
Yes.
He brings it up in his conversation with Borch. Borch tells him, like, you're not a servile golem. And he's kind of, like, trying to pep the Witcher back up. And the Witcher asks, do you have a destination at the end of the road? And Borch says, I do. Geralt says, lucky for you. Borch says, it's not a matter of luck, Geralt. It's a matter of what you believe in and what you serve. No one ought to know that better than a Witcher. It's definitely about the journey, not the destination, but it's also a matter of values, I think, especially.
Yes, this whole journey is, let's say, told in some background, not directly.
Yeah.
This whole story is not directly told, rather it's more, I don't know how to say it, but...
When you know the end of the story, create the whole view and another point
Yes, you understand it fully, and you understand all the quotes they do and why they tell it. What is the background? Because here the direct words are not the main meaning of this.
Yeah, there's a lot of beauty in reading and rereading this saga. I mean, obviously all three of us really adore it, but I do have people that ask me like, oh, how many times have you read it? I was like, honestly, I think I read Baptism of Fire cover to cover at least a dozen times because it's my favorite. It's like, I feel like every time you read it, there's, more and more to be unearthed.
Yes.
And it's always just a good time. It's very funny, which I think surprises people. But yeah, like even going back and taking notes for the podcast, even though I've read these stories a ton of times, I'm rereading it and I'm just like, oh crap, I missed that like the first, second, third time. And it makes it a very rich.
Yes, they're very deep.
Yes.
And it's always something new to discover
discover
when you read it. I remember to read it when I was a little child. Well, maybe not little, but I was a teenager.
I have 12.
Yes, and I don't remember many things, to be honest, from it, because the last time I played games and it's somehow different from the books. So it's not exactly the same, and they adapted it to the needs of the game. Sometimes I'm just curious about the things I've lost during the last years when I wasn't reading the book, and now I'm discovering it again. So, yeah.
I remember when I first played the game. Wow, this is not in the book.
Or was it? Or it wasn't?
I remember exactly, and I have problems with that.
Yes. So it's always very nice to discover something new and remember the things you've lost over the years.
Yeah. So the chapter continues, and as they're talking, they're interrupted by members of the party who, have stopped. Reason being is that the convoy has hit a bridge in the middle of the wilderness that Sheepbagger, who's a local from Bearfield, insists that they cross. And Guildenstern is like, why should we take this? It doesn't really look stable. We should take the longer route. We should take the trail. And Sheepbagger insists, this way is shorter. The king wants to go there. So they decide to take the bridge. While this happens, Borch tells Geralt to go. At first he tells him to stay, and then he tells him to go, and Geralt asks why. And Borch says, just go, it'll be better that way. So Geralt rides to the front of the convoy, and as they're getting people across the bridge, suddenly a landslide starts to happen. The whole convoy scatters. Some people make it across the bridge, the Reavers, the Dwarves, the king, Guildenstern. Geralt's horse rears up, and Geralt falls off. Durigare tries to save him, but Geralt turns back around when he realizes that Yennefer's horse had also kicked her off.
Yes.
So he goes back to save Yennefer, and there's just rocks raining everywhere. She protects them with the magic sphere, and they start to run across the bridge. As they do, the bridge collapses out from under them, and they're just falling in free fall toward a river at the bottom of the ravine. Geralt takes a knife, stabs it between the timbers of the bridge, and they're just dangling there. Yennefer's, I think, holding onto his back or to his belt. She's just a dead weight for Geralt, and he's trying to hold on to them. Dandelion is asking people to throw them down a rope, and everyone just stands there and is like, well, they're like, if we wait until Yennefer falls off, we'll just pull the Witcher up. And, obviously that upsets them all. Geralt is trying to talk to Yennefer. They obviously both think they're going to die in this moment. Geralt asks Yen for forgiveness, and she says no, never, which is harsh.
Even in such a moment, never, I won't forgive you.
And when this happens, there's like a golden magical rope that comes down, and it pulls the pair up, and that's the end of part 6.
Yes, and they're luckily saved.
So in part 7, the company bickers amongst itself, and the Witcher declares he's leaving, when the group is interrupted by Sheepbagger and a scouting party from Bearfield. They peer over the landscape and see a golden dragon previously thought to be only fabled. The dragon, Villentrentenmirth,
that was nice.
I think I got it.
Yes, you got it.
Villentrentenmirth. The dragon, Villentrentenmirth, roars out to the company, speaking in the common tongue, and addresses them intelligently and by name telepathically. The dragon challenges them to a duel. Ike of Denesle rides out against the dragon under Caingorn. Although the knight rides well, the dragon slaughters the knight's horse and quickly throws him from the saddle. So there's so much here. These last 2 chapters really pack a punch. Ike starts going on this huge tangent where he tells everyone, one should act against evil, O king, with a pure heart and conscience with head raised. But what do we see here? Dwarves who are pagans are born in the darkness and bow before dark forces. Blasphemous sorcerers usurping divine laws, powers, and privileges. A witcher who's an odious aberration, an accursed, unnatural creature. Are you surprised that a punishment has befallen us, King Nidemir? We have reached the limits of possibility. Divine grace is being sorely tested. I call you, King, to purge the filth from our ranks. De Rigore interrupts, saying, I think you are exaggerating a little, Sir Ike, although no doubt for noble reasons. I regard the making known of your views about sorcerers, dwarves, and witchers as quite unnecessary. Although I think we've all become accustomed to such opinions, it's neither polite nor chivalrous, Sir Ike, and it is utterly incomprehensible after you and no one else ran and used a magical elven rope to save a witcher and a sorceress whose lives were in danger. I conclude from what you say that you should rather have been praying for them to fall. And Yennefer questions, Sir Ike, why was that? I'm blasphemous, but you saved my life. And Ike says, you are a lady, Madam Yennefer, and your comely and honest face permits me to believe that you will one day renounce this accursed sorcery. And Boholt, one of the Reavers, just snorts. As they're fighting, they're interrupted by Sheepbagger and the scouting party, and they're just like, there's a dragon. And as soon as the company hears that there's a dragon, they all get on their horses and they ride.
And it's not the dragon they thought they will be fighting with.
Yeah, it's not the dragon that they've been stalking this whole time.
Surprise, surprise.
None of them can believe their eyes because the dragon that they see on the hillock is golden. It's incredibly beautiful. The book describes this dragon as, there was something inexpressibly graceful in the creature and the way it was sitting, something feline, something that contradicted its clearly reptilian origins, but it was also undeniably reptilian. For the creature was covered in distinctly outlined scales, which shone with a glaring light of bright yellow gold. For the creature sitting on the hillock was golden from the tips of its talons dug into the ground to the end of its long tail, which was moving very gently among the thistles growing on the hill. Looking at them with its large golden eyes, the creature unfurled its broad golden bat-like wings and remained motionless, demanding to be admired.
Now, when we're waiting for Netflix material, everybody create a memes about Old Witcher, the new Witcher, series. About Dandelion, and about the dragon.
Yeah.
And the situation, and about a reason. Our dragon is very...
The CGI was so poor.
Yeah.
Oh, I saw that. It made me laugh.
It was so poor.
About Dragon asking Tomasz Bagiński to hire for Netflix.
Actually, I think Redanian Intelligence, they shared an interview with Lauren S. Hishrik, the showrunner, and apparently someone had asked her, like, had she seen the Polish adaptation? She said, people do send me links of the Golden Dragon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Redanian Intelligence had a screen cap of the Golden Dragon and they captioned it, the most beautiful. I just snorted because the most beautiful is a line from the prose, at least in English, and I just laughed so hard.
We all remember the dragon forever. We will remember it forever in our minds and imagination. Yes, I cannot forget that.
And people have now a little fun about that. When the Netflix Witcher came, they torrent old version and
they just name it.
Yeah, just name it as a new one, and now you open and wow, this dragon is amazing.
Yes. Oh my god, so stupid.
Yeah, CGI has evolved.
Yes, of course. But it's still funny.
Oh, it's so funny. I wonder what's going to happen. Like, we have heard in interviews that they're going to try to use as little CGI as necessary. I mean, obviously, if you're creating a dragon, you're going to need some CGI, but I'm really excited to see what that might mean for the Netflix show.
You're very curious about that.
But I'm not sure, but we have Tomasz Bagiński create a little YouTube series, Legendy Polskie Allegro.
Polish Legends Allegro.
And it's a little part about basilisk. Yes, and they create a monster, and everybody in Poland thinking, oh, so maybe this is how the monsters in The Witcher look like.
So when they realize that the dragon's golden, everyone's kind of like, oh, is this real? This can't be real. And then Boholt is like, stop that. There's no point in getting worked up. Any blockhead can see it's a golden dragon. What's the difference if it's golden or not? And Beanpole, he's the youngest Reaver, Boholt's little brother, says there is a difference, and a vital one. That isn't the dragon we're stalking, not the one who was poisoned outside Bearfield. Yarpin says back, that dragon is golden, Kennet. Have you ever seen anything like it? Don't you understand? We'll get more for its hide than we would for a normal treasure hoard. They're just like bickering and bickering and bickering. Then the dragon speaks. unexpectedly.
He's talking.
Yep, and he says, King Nidemir and you knights, I am the dragon Villa Trentenmirth. As I see, the landslide which I sent down on your heads did not completely stop you. You've come this far. As you know, there are only 3 ways out of this valley, east toward Bearfield and west toward Cairngorm, and you may use those roads. You will not take the northern gorge, gentlemen, because I, Villain Trentenmirth, forbid you. However, if anyone does not wish to respect my injunction, I challenge him to fight an honorable knightly duel, with conventional weapons, without spells, without breathing fire. Give fight to the utter capitulation of one of the sides. I await an answer through your herald, as custom dictates. Everyone is just stunned, completely stunned, that this dragon is not only speaking in the common tongue, it's speaking intelligently. And Yennefer says, with a forked tongue, it shouldn't be capable of articulated speech, so it must be using telepathy, so just be careful because it works in both ways. Everyone's like, oh, we should just be rid of it, just forget about what he's saying, and Ike of Denesle steps up and he's like, no. Or they talk about just, using dirty tricks to get rid of the dragon, and he says, I will not permit knightly honor to be insulted in my presence. Whomsoever dares to violate the principles of this honorable duel, whomsoever affronts honor affronts me. And his or my blood will be shed on this tired earth. The beast calls for a duel. Very well, let the herald trumpet my name. May divine judgment decide. On the dragon's side is the power of fang and talon and infernal fury, and on my side... And anyway, he keeps going. He talks about the tears of virgins and all this other stuff. And Yarpen just says, what a moron. And, everyone's just kind of sick of it. And I think it might be one of the Reavers who says, whatever, Ike is an idiot. He's already riled himself up. Let's just let him go and see what happens. They find a herald, which they appoint to be Yarpen. Gillensteern says, just talk politely, dwarf sir, and courteously. And the dwarf says, don't learn me how to talk. I was sent on diplomatic missions when you lot were still knee-high to a grasshopper. The prose says, the dragon continued to sit patiently on the hillock, waving its tail cheerfully. The dwarf clambered up onto the largest boulder, hawked, and spat. Hey you there, you fucking dragon you. Listen to what the herald has to say. That means me. The first one to take you on honorably will be the meandering knight Ike of Denesle, and he will stick his lance in your paunch according to the holy custom, to your confusion, and to the joy of poor virgins and King Nidemir. It will be a fair fight, and honorable breathing fire is not allowed, and you may only lambast the other confessionally until the other gives up the ghost or expires, which we sincerely wish on you. Understood, dragon? And it's just so silly.
Yes. So in Polish it sounds even better.
Oh, really?
I promise it's even better.
We can talk a little about the humor.
Oh, yes, the swearing words. In Polish is na pochybel, skurwysynom.
Ciżmo psują.
Zjeżdżaj stąd, ciżmo psują. We don't know what it means like this. Ciżmo psują, but still. Na pochybel, skurwysynom. In English, it should be damn you, mother, you know what? Uh-huh. And it's a very unique word combination in Polish, and in fact it's even in some dialect of Polish language, so it's somehow deep in our culture, like someone sometimes is telling you na pochybel for someone, and it's just derived from it. The second one, I don't know what the words ciżmo psują means, but zjeżdżaj stąd is like go away.
But it's very bad.
But it's a very bad meaning, very bad swearing, I would say, because we have a lot of swearing words in Polish language. In English you have only few words for swearing, and here you have a old dictionary. Whole dictionary for it. So it's even a book for swearing words. And Sapkowski did a great job in doing it in his books, not only like the simple swearing, but the very dialect ones from our language.
And only we understand that.
Yeah, it's very hard to translate it. I don't know how it's translated in the book.
Actually, it's very funny for us because the scene is very beautiful, the golden dragon and everything. And now they are using Polish bad words, and all this scene for us, it's like
comic relief, totally. Yes. So here you have swearing words, and all it turns out to be somehow comedy. They're fighting a dragon, and you're laughing by reading it. So. Like dwarf always is in the Witcher series. It's always about something funny, like the dandelion for me.
Yeah. I think one the wonderful thing about Sapkowski's writing and dialogue is that it's always tight to the character. His dialogue is so spot on with who he's writing for. It's just so Yarpen and it's so dwarven that it's just very funny.
It fits it perfectly.
Ike of Denezle charges the battlefield with his lance and goes to fight this dragon. The dragon very quickly takes care of Ike.
Yes.
He uses a claw to just cut open the stomach of his horse.
Poor thing.
Which obviously the horse just immediately falls over and Ike gets thrown from the horse, but also the dragon hits him in the back and his breastplate falls off. Completely done for. Dragon mercy kills the horse. Obviously, its guts are everywhere. Closing of the chapter says, "In the silence that fell, everyone heard the deep voice of the dragon villain Trentenmirth. The doughty Ike of Denezle may now be taken from the battlefield, for he is incapable of fighting any longer. Next, please." And the chapter just ends with, "Oh, fuck," Yarpen Sigurd said in the silence that followed.
Yes, that's a perfect ending for Sapkowski.
Yes, nice summary of the situation. It tells you everything.
Yeah, it's simply words, this not going well.
No, not at all. And I think you're right. It is just the perfect, concise ending for capturing the emotions, not just from the dragon side and not just from Yarpen himself, but of the situation as a whole. Before we get to the final battle with the dragon villain Trentenmirth, we're going to hand it over to Lars from Witcherflix. When we return, Anita, Karolina, and I will continue our discussion of the bounds of reason.
Hey, it's Lars from Witcherflix, and this is Tidings from Toussaint with a very special extra long edition. We were treated with several new promo pictures and photos from the set in the course of the last 2 weeks. We finally have a beautiful poster with our 3 main protagonists and an awesome map depicting the Northern Kingdoms in the background. Showrunner Lauren S. Hisrick visited the Netflix Witcher subreddit on Reddit and showed us what it was like to shoot scenes among famous mages and sorceresses such as Yennefer, Sabrina Glevizik, Wilgefortz, Triss Merigold, Tissaia de Vries, and even Vaniel of Brugge or Litter Knight, also known as Coral. We already knew that Lauren Hisrick met with Witcher author Andrzej Sapkowski back in 2018 in a restaurant in Poland. In an interview with movieplayer.it, Lauren Hisrick talked about this almost legendary meetup. She said, "We went to lunch together. We talked about ice fishing, his work, and how I would adapt the story. We drank a little too much vodka, but I remember when we were leaving the restaurant I realized I had lunch with a star, because everyone was asking for his autograph. Sapkowski told me what was important to him, to tell the story of 3 orphans looking for a place in the world, touching on topics such as sexism, xenophobia, racism, society's difficulty in accepting what is different. Much of the original content from the books remains, full of spectacular fights, incredible adventures, and monstrous creatures." In an interview with Redanian Intelligence, executive producer Tomek Baginski talked about what made him fall in love with the Witcher saga and his favorite short story. He said, "It was the short story A Grain of Truth in a local science fiction magazine. I loved it instantly, quickly tracked Witcher short story, which was published earlier in the same magazine. And since then I was hooked. I was waiting first for every new short story and then for the books. The popularity of Andrzej Sapkowski in Poland skyrocketed very quickly. The short stories were very popular even before The Last Wish was published as a book." He also mentioned his favorite short story. "It's the lesser evil," he said. "It sets up the moral code of Geralt in the best possible way. In the world when morality is corrupted by power or by vengeance, he just stays with the people. In his world, some things you just don't do. There's no lesser evil. You don't get bargaining about human lives, even if the reason is noble. This makes Geralt also a stubborn bore, but this is who he is." In another interview, this time with IGN Poland, Tomek Baginski was asked about a possible Witcher animated series, similar to the animation he did for the video games. He answered, "I don't want to give away too much here, but who knows if we won't see The Witcher in this style. However, these are things I would rather not talk about too much for now." Well, if you ask me, this sounds very suspicious. In other news, Thanks to various interviews, Witcher composers Sonja Belousova and Gianna Ostinelli have revealed the names of several song titles from the Witcher soundtrack. Don't ever come back to Blaviken in episode 1, Toss a coin to your Witcher and You think you're safe in episode 2, The Fishmonger's Daughter in episode 4, The Last Rose of Cintra and Her Sweet Kiss in episode 6, and A Song of the White Wolf in the season finale. 4 of these songs feature vocals of Jaskier, played by Joey Beatty. When it comes to casting, we have one new actress and one new surprising role to talk about. British actress Josette Simon will play the role of Queen Aithne, the Queen of the Dryads of Brooklyn Forest. She's known for her work on TV shows such as Night Flyers or Broadchurch. According to her profile on Spotlight.com, we know now that actress Viola Prettyjohn will play fake Ciri. In the books, this character first appears in Time of Contempt. Now we meet fake Ciri much earlier in the show than we expected. This is a surprise, but her early appearance will make her role much more meaningful. In addition, we've learned that there will also be a Witcher premiere in Poland. On December 18th, a premiere will take place in Warsaw. Henry Cavill, Anya Chalotra and Freya Allen as well as Lauren Hisrick and Tommy Pegginski will attend the event where 3 episodes will be shown. But arguably the coolest piece of news from the last 2 weeks were the 8 episode titles. They were released on social media together with some unique pieces of artwork. Every episode title was described by one line of poetry too. All 8 lines together reveal a full poem describing season 1 of The Witcher. Now, let's look at the 8 episode titles, artworks and the poem and what all of this could possibly mean. Episode 1 has the title The End's Beginning. The description from the poem is A monster slain, a butcher named. The symbol shows a sun with its rays. This symbolizes the curse of the Black Sun, a prophecy that also afflicts Princess Renfrey in the short story The Lesser Evil. In the background we can see the swamps Geralt fights the Kikimora in. The episode's title could allude to the fact that they show the end of the season already in this episode. The monster mentioned in the poem could refer to the Kikimora or Renfrey at the same time. The butcher points at Geralt's nickname Butcher of Blaviken, which he will almost certainly gain in this episode. Episode 2 has the title 4 Marks. Its description from the poem is We look at the sorceress's earlier days. This episode is all about Yennefer's past and how she became the powerful sorceress we know and love. The symbol shows Yennefer's obsidian star. The snakes could symbolize magic or, according to traditional Greek iconography, healing or curing. In the background we can see the columns of a building. This could be the Magical Academy of Aretusa. Thanks to a leak from someone who already watched the first episodes, we know that the episode title refers to the currency, as in the former German currency Deutsche Mark. The mark as a currency is used in the kingdom of Aedirn. Another hint for the episode being about Yennefer's past, as she is from Vengerberg in Aedirn. Episode 3 has the title Betrayer Moon. Its description from the poem is A picky eater, a family shamed. This episode adapts the short story The Witcher. In the background we can see the crypts of the old palace of Vizima we already saw in the promo pics. The title with its word moon, as well as a picky eater, could refer to the Striga and Geralt's fight with it. The shamed family could be King Foltest's house, who is ashamed of the incest between him and his sister Ada. The symbol mixes the Striga's claw with the Temerian lily. Episode 4 is called Of Banquets, Bastards and Burials, and its description reads, The law of surprise is how one repays. The title and the text refer to the banquet at Cintra, where Queen Calanthe is looking for a husband for her daughter Pavetta, and Geralt later fights the urchin of Ellenwald, after the law of surprise has been called. The picture shows a tree and a desert. These are probably the same Ciri sees in the dream vision sequence from the trailer. The desert could be the Korath Desert, foreshadowing parts of her story in later seasons. The broken sword could refer to the Sword of Destiny and how fragile destiny and fate are. Episode 5 is called Bottled Appetites, and its description is A fateful meeting, a bard is maimed. This episode adapts the short story The Last Wish. The bottled appetite could refer to the amphora Jaskier and Geralt find while fishing, just before they meet the djinn. The fateful meeting is not so hard to decipher. This is when Geralt and Yennefer meet for the first time. The main bard is of course Jaskier after he is attacked by the djinn. The symbol could be a woman and a man fighting against something. Maybe it's Yennefer and Geralt fighting against the djinn. Episode 6 is Rare Species, and the description is The hunt for a dragon is underway. This is very straightforward. The episode title, the text, and the dragon in the symbol refer to the short story The Bounds of Reason and the hunt for the dragon. Episode 7 is called Before a Fall, and its description reads, A return to before a kingdom is flamed. This is also not so hard to decipher. It refers to the sacking of Cintra, symbolized by the lion, the coat of arms of the kingdom of Cintra. And episode 8, the final one, is called Much More. The description is The Witcher Family, as you all like to say. The episode title is a quote from the final short story Something More. It will all come together in this episode. Ciri and Geralt will meet again. It's also possible that Yennefer will be part of this reunion too. The symbol shows Geralt's wolf, Ciri's swallow, and Yennefer's star intertwined. Before I end this episode of Tidings from Toussaint, I'd like to read out this poem again. A monster slain, a butcher named, we look at a sorceress's earlier days, a picky eater, a family shamed, the law of surprise is how one repays. A fateful meeting, a bard is maimed, the hunt for a dragon is underway. A return to before a kingdom is flamed, the Witcher family, as you all like to say. So that's it for today. Only 2 more weeks to go until we can finally watch the show. Until then, thanks again for listening and good luck on the path.
Welcome back from the break. I'm here with our friends Anita and Karolina discussing the first short story from Andrzej Sapkowski's Sword of Destiny, The Bounds of Reason. When we left off, Geralt had joined a hunting party stalking a dragon near Bearfield. After overcoming social tensions amongst the party and a sudden landslide, the company stumbled upon a golden dragon which challenged them to a duel. So in Part 8, after Ike is removed from the battlefield, Nidemir decides to return to Caingorn with his men, leaving the Witcher, bards, sorcerers, reavers, and dwarves behind. Derigere threatens the group and is attacked by the reavers and dwarves before Geralt attempts to stop them. Yennefer ends the brawl with a spell and has the Witcher, bard, and sorcerer tied to the wagon. She threatens the reavers and the dwarves before they tie her to the wagon too. The dragon, impatient, arrives, and the reavers and dwarves attempt to kill it on their own. The dragon injures the reavers and the dwarves run away. So when we open the chapter, Yennefer has examined Ike, and she lets the Witcher know that both of his legs are crushed and his back as well, and he may never ride a horse again. Yennefer pleads with Geralt to kill the dragon for her. She says, "That dragon is unbelievably fast, Geralt. Too fast for a man to fight it." And Geralt says, "I understand. No, Yen, not me." Principles or ordinary commonplace fear, the only human feeling that wasn't eradicated in you. One and the other, what difference does it make? The Witcher responds. Yennefer says, "Precisely, none. Principles may be broken, fear can be overcome. Kill that dragon, Geralt, for me." Ugh. And it's I don't know, something about it.
Yes, change of attitude,
Yeah.
she would never, ever forgive him, and now kill the dragon for me.
Yeah, it just it doesn't sit well with me personally. But the thing is, it comes across as manipulative, but then we hear that the reason why she wants this dragon is because she wants an operation that might reverse her infertility.
Yeah.
Now we understand why,
and I
because
think she's too proud to ask him earlier, and now when she knows that the situation is a little complicated, she asked Geralt about this.
she was too proud to reveal it earlier.
Yeah,
just,
and now
just like that. So
she
it's
have a great argument, I think, because it's something about they care both about the child, and it's now this complicated situation. He's mad, of course, because Ariel, she's a little
bitchy.
for him, yeah, and now she tell him why.
It's the fat of her, that it's based on some deeper reasons, not the facts only.
Yes, but it's bad time and bad place.
Yes, for the discussion.
And next we know that Geralt regret his words to her.
Yeah.
And now we have again and again, their relationship is very complicated.
Of course, none of us approves killing the dragon, but Geralt, despite the fact he knew about Yen's past experiences associated with her childhood and later with training for a sorceress, he treated her very harshly, somehow accusing her when it was about the dragon. As he states, he doesn't understand why Yennefer hunts for the creature, cause she's already famous and she has various sources of income, so why she really insists on killing the dragon? He suspects that Yen just wants to accumulate more riches that are not really necessary for her life. And even during their conversation, she mentions that wizards and jeweler guilds are always associated with dragons. But actually, asking Geralt to kill the dragon is not actually as selfish as he thinks, because this is a very sensitive topic for Yen about the chance to have a child. On the one hand, of course, it's obviously immoral that Yen wants to kill the dragon. On the other, the parent will do anything to save the child. For Yen, deepest desire is to have one of her own, so she would sacrifice a lot for this cause, which seems for her as some kind of justification. This part of the story is about the borders Yen is ready to cross and what price is she willing to pay for it.
That excerpt specifically, Yennefer is still pleading for him to kill this dragon, and she tries to make a barter with him. And she says, "When we were hanging on the bridge, you asked me for something. I'll meet your request in spite of everything." The prose reads, "The Witcher smiled sadly and touched the obsidian star on Yennefer's neck with his index finger. It's too late, Yen. We aren't hanging now. It stopped mattering to me, in spite of everything." And it's incredibly heartbreaking. We just rolled off of a passage where her intentions seemed incredibly manipulative, especially with how she's been treating him throughout the whole chapter. Then all of a sudden, our expectations and Geralt's expectations are really turned around. And it reads, "He expected the worst. A cascade of fire, lightning, a smack in the face, abuse, curses. He was surprised just to see the suppressed trembling of her lips. Yennefer slowly turned away. Geralt regretted his words. He regretted the emotion which had engendered them. The limit of possibility overstepped, now snapped like a lute string."
I think the silent is more terrible for Geralt.
This is the worst answer.
Yeah.
Again, it's really heartbreaking, but I think as you guys mentioned, it alludes to the complex nature of their relationship.
Yeah, and now we have this problem because Geralt don't want to kill the dragon. She asked him for this. He know why she asked, and it's a big topic for them, the child. And now again we have this part in Geralt's character when he must choose evil or worst evil,
Yes.
and he didn't want to choose anything because everything is bad.
So he chooses, in fact, to save the dragon.
Yeah.
After all this, King Nidemir orders the men from Caingorn back home. And as they retreat, Dorigere threatens the dwarves and the reavers. And, they just smack him and, dispatch him. Geralt tries to help. They're all brawling, but not lethally. They're not trying to kill each other, but they're trying to curb each other.
Yeah.
So eventually, Geralt tries to step in to stop them from attacking Dorigere, and then Yennefer steps in to stop the Witcher. The reavers and the dwarves tie the Witcher, bard, and sorcerer to a wagon. And then as soon as that's done, Yennefer turns on the dwarves and the reavers, saying, "You guys are going to go to the bottom of the hill. I'm going to take care of the dragon using my own magic and unconventional weapons." Yarpin takes a really small ball, kind of like in The Edge of the World with the Sylvan. Yarpin just pelts this little iron ball at Yennefer's forehead, and before she can even get her bearings again, the reavers tie her up and stick her on the wagon as well, but not before opening her blouse, and Boholt just gropes her openly, which is awful. Now that everyone's tied to the wagon, the reavers and the dwarves go to attack the dragon, and the dragon comes to them. The dragon just quickly takes care of the reavers, scattering them across the battlefield. The dwarves just make a run for it, so they're completely useless. The second half of the chapter, the Bearfield Constabulary arrives, and they attempt to capture and kill the dragon with nets. In a moment of rage and helplessness, the dragon lets out a cry, which is answered by the Zerrikanians, who charge into the battlefield. Yennefer, though still tied to the wagon, uses her leg to cast spells and attacks the Bearfield Constabulary from the wagon. After they're taken care of, Vea is about to kill Yennefer when Borch stops her, sitting on a stone holding the dragonling. This is basically the big twist of the story.
No one expected that.
No. What has happened is that Sheepbagger, this annoying local that's been tagging along the convoy the whole time, eventually the rest of his company arrive. They actually get it to a point where the dragon is actually caught in a number of nets and is desperately in danger. And so the dragon lets out a cry, and the Zerrikanians come, which... Pew, as I said, it's the big twist, and everyone's kind of putting the pieces together.
When Borch know better the human and Yennefer or Geralt, now his point of view changed, and in this part we can learn more about order and chaos. I mean, for Borch at the beginning everything is very simple, and he tried to
convince Geralt
and
to
now
choose a side.
Yeah, and now himself changed his point of view. In this part we know that everything is not that simple.
It's not only black and white and chaos and order.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's gray, so we're just going back to the beginning, to their scenes when they were at the end discussing the most important things about this chaos and order and how to choose a side or not to choose a side or have some moral background other than just black and white.
As everyone is piecing stuff together, Dandelion says, "Do you understand, Geralt? There's an ancient ballad about a golden dragon. A golden dragon can," and Geralt finishes the sentence, "can assume any form it wishes, even that of a human. I've heard that too, but I didn't believe it." And after Borch has changed back and all of the Bearfield's constabularies have been taken care of between Yennefer and Thea and Vea, the Zerrikanians, Yennefer and Geralt go over to Borch and have a conversation with them. The Witcher says, "Three Jack, Villain Trentonmirth, or Borch, or Three Jackdaws," says, "My name, when freely translated into your language, means three black birds." He kind of talks about chaos and order. Villain Trentonmirth smiled. "Do you remember, Geralt? Chaos is aggression, order is protection against it. It's worth rushing to the ends of the world to oppose aggression and evil, isn't it, Witcher? Particularly, as you said, when the pay is fair." And this time it was. It was the treasure hoard of the she-dragon, Myrta Brake, the one poisoned outside Bearfield. She summoned me to help her to stop the evil threatening her. Myrta Brake flew away as soon as Ike of Denesle was removed from the battlefield. She had sufficient time while you were talking and quarreling, but she left me her treasure as payment. The dragonling squealed and flapped its little wings. So you... That's right, the dragon interrupted. Well, it's the times we live in. For some time, creatures, which you usually call monsters, have been feeling more and more under threat from people. They can no longer cope by themselves. They need a defender, some kind of witcher.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the destination, the goal at the end of the road, this is it. Villain Trentonmirth lifted his forearm. The dragonling squealed in alarm. I've just attained it. Owing to him, I will survive, Geralt of Rivia. I shall prove that there are no limits of possibility. One day you will also find such a purpose, Witcher. Even those who are different can survive. Farewell, Geralt. Farewell, Yennefer. And so I think, as we said, there's a sneaky little line in there that definitely alludes to Geralt's relationship and his future found family.
I didn't find more information about this, but in this book, History and Fantasy, an interview between Sapkowski and Stanisław Bereś, it's information about Bounds of Reason is the first story, and that's all. And I don't understand this because Sapkowski have a story in Fantastica magazine that was Witcher, which is from the Last Wish book. Now we have this information that Bounds of Reason is the first story, and I don't have any more information, but we can read in this book that Bounds of Reason is the first idea about creation, the family between Yennefer and Geralt, his problems, they don't have a child. This part starts everything that comes in the next stories, next books, and etc.
Yes.
There is a huge section of this where, we now learn that Borch is essentially a witcher for monsters.
Yeah.
which is super interesting.
For me, and I think maybe for other people, this end of the story is a great example that witchers, like Geralt, are between monsters and humans, but must create a balance. They not only for human killing monsters.
Yes, but also defend monsters from humans.
Because as we know, humans are the worst monsters.
Yes.
And for me, this is a great example for that. The Witchers defending the monsters. Yes, that's what we said. But monsters are better than humans sometimes, and we should learn from them.
So just as we told, the universe of Witcher is not black and white. It's not only the chaos and order, nothing between it. It's always some choice. It's always some grace in the colors of the choices. So each character, each situation has its own, let's say, resolution, has its own direction. And it's not always so obvious about the sides we should choose and the Witcher should choose, as Geralt does in many situations.
And we kind of see the reasons why, at least for Borch, this exists, and both of you have already talked about this briefly. But Geralt asks, Villentretenmerth, Mirth, you can assume any form, any that you wish. And Villentretenmerth, Mirth, the dragon, confirms. And Geralt asks, why then a man? Why Borch with 3 black birds on his coat of arms? And it says, the dragon smiled cheerfully. I don't know, Geralt, in what circumstances the distant ancestors of our races encountered one another for the first time. But the fact is that for dragons, there is nothing more repugnant than man. Man arouses instinctive, irrational disgust in a dragon. With me, it's different. To me, you're likable. Farewell. And, the prose kind of finishes out with, it was not a gradual blurred transformation or a hazy pulsating trembling as with an illusion. It was as sudden as the blink of an eye. Where a second before had stood a curly-haired knight in a tunic decorated with 3 black birds, now sat a golden dragon, gracefully extending its long, slender neck. Inclining its head, the dragon spread its wings, dazzlingly gold in the sunshine. Yennefer sighed loudly. I think it's either Borch had more of an inclination toward humans or his view on them changed with Geralt's. There's an interesting little wrap-up in this. For the most part, aside from the Bearfields constabularies, no one was really killed out of the main group. It seems that Borch wasn't really fighting with them to truly, slaughter them all. Except for Sheepbagger, who he just kind of ate.
Well, there's always has to be someone who should play this role. Come on.
So, this does take us to the end of the chapter. And Anita and Caroline, do you guys have any last thoughts on either the chapter or the themes that we encountered?
Actually, many chapters for Sapkowski's book Last Wish and Swords of Destiny, it's different point of view of relationships between humans, monsters and witchers. And I think this part is about the hope that humans can change, can be good, and the monsters can be good, and they are cooperate together.
Yes.
They have someone like Witcher who answers monsters and create a space for understanding each other.
Yes.
It's hope. And it's a very good ending because it's actually
an open ending for another
stories, and I think it's a good story. It's about hope, I think, a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a hope for everyone. They can understand each other, they can find some common thing to make the world better.
Make a good decision.
Yes, not to fight with each other all the time. For example, Geralt and Yennefer, they can always find something in common. Infertility can be bonding for them.
Because in the end, they are together. And then understand each other.
Yes, not fighting anymore. In fact, at the first glance, the story is quite simple. We have dragon to kill, we have the whole journey, the whole company just going to kill the dragon. But it's not really about killing the dragon. It's a very deep story, and I think that's the most interesting part of this.
Yes.
And it has few levels.
Yes, about monsters, about relationships, and about Geralt and Yennefer, actually.
Yes, so we have different themes here, different topics, and different levels of understanding the story. So that's really astonishing for me.
Yeah.
Magnificent story, I would say. Quite short, but interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the way that you phrased it. Good and evil isn't necessarily defined by what creature you are, what race you are, what class you are, but it really does come down to goals and intention and action, and that's really what makes the distinction between good and evil.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not just in the Witcher world, but I think in our world at large. And I really like the way that you talked about that. I think, as you guys had said, it is a story with a closing message about hope and about compassion and empathy and
understanding.
Yeah. So this is one of the best stories out of the short stories, just because it really does seem to have almost everything.
Yes.
It's a lot of good fun. That's it for our show today. Anita, Caroline, thanks so much for joining us for this episode, and thank you to our Hanza for listening. So where can people find you, and is there anything that our community can help you with, or anything that you'd like to share with them?
We are Witcher Kitchen, project about cuisine inspired by the Witcher's universe. You can find us on WitcherKitchen.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. You can also visit our second blog about food design in video games and with many recipes inspired by various virtual universes, and it's called nerdskitchen.pl. So we invite you to visit our websites and hope you will like our work. And thank you for listening.
Next episode, we're heading back south for another episode with Charlotte from Vengberg Glamorai, this time to explore the ever-complicated nature of Geralt and Yennefer's relationship in A Shard of Ice. Thanks for joining us at the Breakfast Table. For show notes, transcripts of each episode, and a complete list of our social platforms and listening services, head over to breakfastandbeauclair.com. Breakfast and Beauclair is created by Alyssa from GoodMorhen, is hosted by Alyssa with the Tidings from Toussaint news segment by Lars from Witcherflix. The show is edited by Alyssa with the Breakfast and Beauclair theme by Mojo Filter Media and the Tidings from Toussaint theme by Bettina Campomanes. Breakfast and Beauclair is produced by Alyssa in New York City with Louise of Covier, the owner of the Churlish Porpoise, Cool Guy Henry, Eric Sgodling, Katie, Jacob, Mahaka Milder Joe, Julie, Sylvia of Skellige, Jameson, Wolfie, and Brandon. Special thanks to Anita and Caroline for joining us for this episode, and our international Hanza for their support.